We'll get started. Welcome to the research track of WESST. This is the workshop on education and social science technologies that School of Computing and ALSET is putting together. And this is the morning address, which will take the first couple of minutes. So first we have a welcome address by Kian from the Department of Computer Science. Further ado, Kian.
Good morning. Can you hear me? First, let me welcome all of you to this workshop, especially our overseas visitors who have come a long way, and other members of the university who are probably from different departments. Welcome to this inaugural workshop, right, on educational technologies and social science technology. As you probably know, already know, data analytics, IT is transforming education, and therefore we think this is a good platform, right, for us to bring together people from different places to look at what we can do to enhance teaching using technology. So once again, let me first welcome all of you. I was asked to give a brief overview of the department, the faculty, sorry. So I just have a couple of slides to introduce the faculty. So the faculty is actually established in 1998, so we are actually a very young faculty, less than 20 years old. However, the history dates back earlier. We were previously only a small department within the Faculty of Science. So that's formerly known as Department of Information Systems and Computer Science. I was an alumni there. I graduated in 1988, and I did my PhD there as well in 1994. So I'm strictly speaking, I'm an alumni of science faculty. So because of the so-called importance of IT, the university has decided that the department should become a school, and so we established the School of Computing. And this is sort of the current strength or numbers that we have. Statistics relates to the department. We have about 105 faculty members across 2 departments. So the faculty has only 2 departments, Information System and Computer Science. So we have total about 105 faculty members, 137 research staff. Student population, we're taking about 1,800 undergraduate students. But we have 1,800. We have 1,800 undergraduate students in total. We're taking about 450 every year. This year, our intake has increased, right? So we have probably made an offer to more than 650 students this year. So coming August, we expect to have 650 fresh undergraduate students. Again, this is due to the, I guess, the demand in IT, the interest in IT as well by students. In terms of so-called ranking, we are pleased that we, in terms of ranking by subject in QS, we are top in Asia, and NUS itself is ranked 10 under the Times Higher Education. While we are happy with the ranking, I think it's more important to focus on education, quality education, and which is why I think this workshop is also very timely, because what is more important is to provide good education to our students. Just a brief overview of the so-called research classes that we have in the school. So the school, as I mentioned, has 2 different departments. So the one in green are the clusters that are in computer science. The one in brown, right, which is the clusters in our information systems department. I won't go into the details of these areas, but as you can see, we cover a broad spectrum of areas. And one of the things that we hope to do is really for the two departments to come together and work on more interdisciplinary projects. And we have been trying very hard to promote interaction between the two departments. And I think one of the areas that we are able to achieve that is through this, the study of educational technologies. As you probably are aware, this workshop is organized by Ming from the CS department, by Joseph and Tuan from the IS department. So we hope this will be a good start. Couple of words about our missions that you would expect. We hope to provide high quality education to both the undergraduate student as well as our graduate students. Naturally, this is the national university, and we are expected to provide supply the manpower needs for our country. For your information, it turns out that even the demand for IT people is really high in Singapore. Right? The various universities are not unable to provide that number that is sort of given by the required by the industry. And naturally, we would like to pursue high impact research, and this is something that we have been both engaging the industry to do things that are more relevant to the industry. We have worked with various universities to do some joint collaboration, and that is what we hope to be in the forefront of research, to be leaders in certain areas of strength. So for your information, for example, Singapore has invested a lot of money in sort of IP research. You may have heard of AI.SG, where the government has invested $150 million to look into challenges, grand challenges, experiments, where we can both do fundamental research as well as deploy AI technologies. The other sort of strategic direction, as you would expect, will be the cybersecurity, where lots of money has been put in. We have a corporate lab with Singtel, which is one of the telco in Singapore, that involves something like 40 million Sing dollars. And more recently, the Singapore Data Science Consortium has been set up to facilitate sort of data science research. The goal is to engage the industry, right, to help them to take advantage of this large amount of data that we have and we don't know what to do. So this will be my last slide, just to show you the kind of undergraduate programs that we have. So essentially, all our students go through a set of core, and we have joint program with Faculty of Engineering on the computer engineering program. For our CS, we have essentially two programs: a computer science program and a program on information security. For the information systems department, so their program are more business oriented, so they have a business analytics and a information systems program. Right, so I think that's all I have. Quick overview of the school. If you want more information, please feel free to talk to any of my colleagues here. So once again, I hope you will have a good time, a fruitful discussion during the next 2 days here. Thank you very much.
So good morning, everyone. I bring slides that be a little bit more casual. My name is Bob Kian, and I direct ALSET, and we're just pleased as ALSET is pleased to be able to partner with School of Computing to sponsor this workshop. So probably the most likely question is, what is ALSET? And so that's my job to explain. As young as School of Computing is, at 20 years old, we're about a year old, And so let me tell you a little bit about myself, how I ended up as starting with the unit and what the unit intends to do. So I'm a pediatrician. I'm a practitioner of education. I'm not an educational researcher. And about 12 years ago, I was asked to come from my job at the University of California, teaching pediatricians to become pediatricians, to come to Singapore to help start the Duke NUS Medical School, which was a very unique collaboration between Duke University Medical School of Medicine and NUS, and start a very different kind of medical school here in Singapore. Around the time, technology IT was booming. We were starting to be able to stream video, and there was a lot of opportunities at that time to do some very unique things with medical education. So in terms of thinking about how to move the Duke curriculum to Singapore, one of the solutions that we made was we in fact flipped the classroom. We used the materials from Duke and had our students prepare ahead of time. And our faculty, who originally was planning to recreate those lectures in class and lecture to the students, instead we were able to focus them in creating materials and exercises that happened in class to complement the material that they learned beforehand. And we did them, made them do it both in individuals and made them work in teams to solve problems. Many of them open book, half of the time was open book exercises because we wanted them to think rather than just, in medical school, it's very much, there's so many facts in medical school. So it's really fact-oriented, and people thought that it was crazy to actually have the students do most of their work in open book fashion. Yet we persevered. Actually, the results of our students learning in this way was surprising. We flipped the entire preclinical curriculum, which was unheard of at the time, and attracted a lot of attention here in education for medical education. In fact, changed the way that Duke taught its medical students because of the things that we were able to do and convince the Duke faculty this was indeed the better way to learn. So then about a year ago, then the provost came to me and asked me to help him try to bring more learning science, and the type of work that we did to blend our education at Duke NUS was really based in large part in the learning sciences, what we knew about how people learned. And the provost was concerned that we knew a lot of research facts about how people learn and how they don't learn, but very rarely did that get brought into the classroom. So the task of ALSET was to be very practical. That's why the application where it starts is the A for ALSET. But to really try to focus our activities on bringing the learning science into the classroom in a very, very practical way. So we are in the business, as several other groups at NUS, to helping our learners learn better. Now, the traditional way that universities do that is they set up units to help train the faculty to teach better. And in fact, NUS has a well-established, excellent group called CDTL, which is really tasked with trying to get our faculty to teach better. We have a unit called CIT, Center for Instructional Technology, that's really meant to get technology in the hands of professors to let them teach better. But there's another part of that equation, is that the students. And so one of the things that we wanted to do at ALSET was to really also focus on students and help them be better prepared to learn how to learn, better prepared to learn. And we thought an important strategic focus of the unit to help the students learn better was to get better feedback on the learning that they get. That the data that the students are getting about their learning is not sufficient for them to optimally learn. Therefore, the focus is on trying to collect the data for this purpose. We also knew that, or felt that the faculty feedback on the data, on the way that they're teaching, is also minimal. That typically they have their impression in classroom, how many people show up, how many people fall asleep. They also have the impressions from the feedback. But as Dragon pointed out yesterday in the talk, and something that we know well, there are certain limits to the feedback that students give to the faculty. It's an important perspective, but it can't be the only perspective. And in fact, that we really want to create that, as was emphasized yesterday, create an environment where people approach education with the idea of having evidence of the literature, and evidence in terms of data that really drives the education and drives the learning of students. So that's why ALSET is one of the major focuses to really try to bring all the educational data in the university together. So that's not a trivial task. We have some of our faculty really working on that very hard. And this conference is really to try to help us understand what are the best ways of using that data. What are, NUS does not have the traditional, have the problem in many universities in terms of student retention. And that was a big win for learning analytics. But what will be our win? And what are the things that we can do to better optimize the way that our students learn and our faculty teach? So that's why you've heard a lot of the speakers come in. I've been so excited. My biggest criticism of yesterday's sessions was that I could not decide which one to go to. There were so many good ones. So I'm looking forward to the fact that they're available online for me to get at. But we are, this is one of our attempts to really reach out at the faculty, because we won't be successful as a unit if we're just a core group of faculty. So we have a number of faculty whose research work aligned directly with ALSET. Min or Joseph, who you heard from, Chris Bosch, who's really putting together all the data together. And we'll be bringing people in who fill particular niches within this idea of learning science and the practical application in the classroom. But we won't be successful unless we're really able to engage faculty at NUS, students at NUS, in this whole mission to try to improve and bring in learning sciences into the classroom. So this was, so the workshop was in a sense a recruitment strategy for our team to really identify the people who are really interested. So you may get at some point along the line when we're ready, we may reach out to you and try to engage you further with ALSET activities, because what we're trying to do in ALSET is provide the resources to help faculty in all the various schools and departments at NUS be able to have the resources and people that allow them to do research in education, to explore the way that they're teaching, to understand and document better the quality of the teaching that they are doing. So, for example, we have a new educators track at NUS, and those educators are going to increasingly need to be able to prove that they are outstanding, our best educators at NUS. And so they'll need to kind of figure out, develop tools to be able to show to the promotion and tenure committee that in fact they are advancing education. And ALSET's really preparing to be able to partner with them, as well as other faculty from all over different parts of NUS, to be able to participate in educational research, drive some of that in their own laboratory, which is their classroom that they're teaching, and then be able to be successful academically, not only that they're teaching, but teaching better, but to better and move the needle in terms of educational innovation and research. So that's really all I want to say about ALSET. We're a very different kind of unit because we're very focused on higher education. A lot of schools of education are K-12 oriented. We're very higher education oriented. We want to be very data oriented. That's why our investment in learning sciences and in data analytics and learning analytics. And we want to be able to, as I said, be a community where people interested, students, faculty, postdocs, PhDs, interested in education have a home to meet other like-minded people. And as they say, really continue to improve the way that we teach here at NUS. So I sort of identified Min, Chris, and Joseph. We're a slowly growing team. For those of you who want to hear more about ALSET, please get us at the tea breaks and lunch. And we'd be happy to tell you more about how you might participate further in ALSET activities. So thank you very much. Back to Nick.
Thanks, Bob, for the introduction. So next, we will go through the ALSET data lake. Chris, who's the Deputy Director for Operations in ALSET, will talk about this.
All right, hi, I'm Chris, and controlling. Yes, I'm going to talk about the data lake. In general, the idea behind the data lake is already in NUS for many years has been capturing lots of data. Every click that every student makes in the learning management system, IBLE, everything from networking logs to all the information students give us about themselves when they come in. And at a high level, we just want to make this the best experience that we can for the students and also for the faculty who are trying to teach these students. There could right now be a lot of systematic problems that exist that we just haven't been identifying because there is so much data, it's so quickly moving, and things are always changing. New problems could be popping up. It could be whenever a student takes the same 3 classes, their odds of having a really bad grade in one class go up greatly. The students aren't aware, and perhaps even the faculty in their school aren't aware, right? So we want to find a way so that we can get better eyes on all of this data, allow researchers to ask interesting questions, and if there is any signal in this noise, any consistent patterns, we'd like to raise them to the schools, perhaps individual faculty, like, hey, here's 3 students that are taking these 4 courses. You might really want to give some extra time and let them know to watch out that they don't fall behind. And eventually maybe down to individual students. So we're pulling a lot of that data together and trying to put a lot of the tools around it that let us work with data as it continues to grow every single year. So we have a lot of different data sets that are coming in. I mentioned IBLE, the LMS type data. We already have a lot of that data flowing in, all the student information data. And as we go throughout the year, we'll be adding more and more data based on the type of questions that faculty want to ask. So if a low-income student is or is not getting some kind of a financial assistance, does that change their GPA? Does that change the amount of courses that they want to take? Or similarly, if someone is working based on their income level, does that change how they perform in school? Different professors have different questions, right? And so we just want to put an environment in place that people can go ask those 100 different questions and find out if there is anything statistically significant, right? Does it matter if students stay up all night studying or not? And different people have different opinions, different students have different opinions. We'd like to know what the data says, right? Do internships matter? Should you take short internships, long internships? I've started hearing a variety of questions, and as the Institute, we're very interested in what wild questions you might have, even if you're not interested in researching them as a faculty member. So we'll probably just continue to add to our list of questions that people have that they'd like to look at. And then our job is to go out and see, do we have the data that would allow us to address those questions? So some of the new data sets that we continue to look at that we're starting to plan to go into this data lake are things related to the graduate employment survey. I mentioned some of these others, but the idea to think longitudinally across your whole career, what are the things that are going to increase your likelihood to get the offer you want for a job, to get multiple offers for a job, perhaps make more money, perhaps better fit into the needs of the marketplace in the future. And we want to see if there's some interesting signals in there. So everything down here from co-curricular activities, which co-curricular activities best correlate to successful outcomes, depending on how you want to define successful outcomes. So we'll continue looking for new data sets. If there's other data sets that you think would be interesting for us to integrate into the data lake, please let us know. As the data flows into the data lake, we anonymize all of the data so that it'll be possible for researchers, once they get clearance to access the anonymized data, they can go and run queries, and they won't see individual student information like names or student IDs, but they will see sort of this tokenized data that let them sort of freely explore and run lots of different queries on the data without worrying about discovering something about an individual student that maybe they shouldn't know. We'll put a lot of different tools in place based on the needs of the community. Some of the most common questions I've heard are around something called a Jupyter Notebook server that a lot of people are familiar with, who know how to write Python code or R code. We've got other people who want to work in something called R Studio where they can write R code. And then we'll probably continue to look at other tools based on the skills already available in the community. Everything from MATLAB to Hue. I still have to learn what Hue is, and we'll continue to explore different types of tools. All right, and with that, that's it.
Thanks very much, Chris. So I'll just give a couple minutes about the research part of ALSET. So already many of us are faculty members here at NUS, and we work on our own courses, and we innovate in our own courses. And one way we can do and pilot that innovation is to go get external grants from grant agencies like NIE, the National Research Foundation, or Ministry of Education. So meeting that challenge of being able to apply to those grants can be fairly tricky. And so NUS has an internal strategy for meeting that, usually consisting of having the Office of the Deputy President, Research and Technology oversee and administer that grant. So when you go for external funding, you have to apply early, and then there are grant officers within OD, PRT that check over your package and make sure it fits for the right purpose. So as Bob mentioned, ALSET is a little bit interesting in the sense that it is not under OPDRT. It's a separate unit that reports directly to the provost. And in such a way, we hope to add another thin layer in review processing, in thinking and strategizing for all the grants that are education related. And so Bob already mentioned the fact that ALSET will have faculty members who are going to be listed in the website and have the designation of core or affiliated faculty. So a number of core faculty are either jointly appointed or have research that have a longitudinal or cross modular impact to the community. So they could be studying motivational habits, they could be studying mindsets, or anything that would have a longitudinal impact. So those types of faculty members we think are going to help NUS level its pedagogical profile up, and also help the rest of Singapore and perhaps have an effect on the entire world. Affiliated faculty are researchers who need access to the data that Chris just talked about, where you might correlate data from your own class that you're taking in through survey instruments or other things, but also look at other outcomes and variables that NUS knows of, but you yourself as a lecturer may not know of. Okay, so putting all those pieces together can help you boost your learning outcomes and provide evidence-based methods and evaluation of your innovations that can help in the science of learning. So, fine, those are the designations that we have for faculty. What do you get in return? Well, this is what we are thinking of, but we also want to hear from all of you, faculty members. What needs do you have if you wanted to do more with your educational pedagogical practices, right? If you want to innovate, it obviously takes a lot of time on your hands to craft an innovation. Then what happens, right? How are you going to get institutional support, either from your department heads or your deans, okay? But also from ALSET, so we can have access to the data that's over the entire university, but can we do other things for you? Can we help you file your IRBs? Can we give you some type of bridge funding if you need to pilot a project before you want to show evidence to external granting agencies? And so core faculty will have that privilege as well as affiliated ones, except core faculty will have additional duties and privileges associated with their rank. So I just want to tell you a couple seconds about related research grants. So in-house at NUS, we already have 2 that are administered by CDTL. That's the Teaching Enhancement Grant and the Learning Innovation Grant, the 2 at the top here. But definitely there are quite a lot of different agencies in Singapore. I mean, Singapore is an alphabet city, right? There's so many acronyms. And part of that is the proliferation of different grants that seem to hit very similar targets. So itself, the Ministry of Education has a tertiary research fund which looks at tertiary education, including university, but not limited to that. So it could be polytechnic or ITE related tertiary level. EduLab is another grant that we can focus on that's due quite soon, where you have to partner with the K-12 school to put a ground-up learning practice into schools and secondary, and it's very similar to the Academies Fund that's also been called for in recent months. Okay, so those are the 3 grants from NIE, and I think a lot of people are confused. I was at first about what are the differences between these grants. So please come to me or talk with our representatives from NIE who are also here to learn more about these grants. Separately from that, we also have the Workforce Development Agency that looks at long-term, lifelong learning. Right, they're concerned about career development pathways after people leave the secondary school as well as the tertiary institutions. What happens there? Because we know that our graduates have to continually retrain and occasionally change careers. They have a Workforce Development Applied Research Fund, or WDARF, which we'll hear a presentation from later. And their review cycle is also aligned to the Social Science Research Council. So if you happen to be applying for something like continuing education, the Social Science Research Council is part of the agencies that are going to be evaluating your grant. So these 2 grants are in some ways quite connected. Finally, we have the National Research Foundation that's very similar to US National Science Foundation. They have 2 different grants that are related to learning. One is the Science of Learning, which is the last item on the slide, which is catered towards neuroscience related activities. So it's not directly related to educational technology, but looks at basic research there. Another one that's coming up that's not listed on this slide is the Aig Initiative, which Kian Lee had just mentioned earlier, which is I think $100 million being poured into AI research, of which of course some of it will be slated towards technologies and could be applied to education. So how does it really work? If you are a faculty member and you think you can help level up the pedagogical profile of NUS and you would like to work with ALSET, and I think hopefully we can appeal to all of you to do that, what you need to do is basically contact us and link us with one of the programs that we have. Let's say the data lake that we heard from Chris. Bob is also piloting this Learning to Learn course, which will be offered optionally to all of the undergraduates. We also administer the university-wide surveys for matriculation when students come into the university, as well as with the Learning Innovation Lab, which is a student-centered project lab, which we're going to take student projects that are specifically about education and peer learning and put them into production to make them available university-wide. Okay, so with any one of these programs, if your research or your innovation connects to that, then please let us know so that we can help you win the grant through the preparation of the grant, but also help you through indirect costs. Because what is happening at NUS is the provost has decided that since he's commissioned ALSET, we are going to be able to have steady state funding when faculty win grants that are connected to ALSET's programs. And with that, I'll just say, let Joseph come down and preview today's and tomorrow's program for the workshop. And then with that, I will hand it over to the speaker afterwards.
Thanks, Dr. So I'm Joseph Williams. I'm Assistant Professor in Information Systems and Analytics, so it's the Department of School of Computing.
And so one thing I think you'll notice is that we have tried to make this accessible to people who aren't able to make it, but also to other colleagues who aren't able, who might want to watch this later. So there are 3 student volunteers from the super helpful Xiaofeng, Samka, and Jeffrey, if you have questions. But one thing you'll see them doing is actually recording all these talks. So if you ever want to know where you should be going, just go to the schedule. So you can get there by going to the URL tiny.cc/west. So you can pop it up on your phone or anything else. And so tell you where to go. But also every talk, if we have permission, we added slides and link to recording. So anyone who's not here can see this later. Another thing that we wanted student volunteers to add in yesterday is actually, there's a URL here, tiny.cc/west notes. Anyone can open that at some point and you can add comments on each talk, you can add questions. And so this is good because it's another kind of route for getting to speakers and having some reflection later. But in our closing session tomorrow, we're actually going to review a lot of these comments and questions. As Min said and Bob said, it's really trying to get faculty to give input and feedback. So I'll just quickly run through this and turn it over to Dragan. So we had this opening section. Dragan Gaspar is going to talk about critical directions for learning analytics, research, and practice. Then we have some presentations by people here in computer science. So teammates, a flexible management system for education. Then Visualgo, visualizing data structures and algorithms through animation. And finally, Archipelago, live interaction platform for large classes. So these are all examples of tools that we developed that you might be interested in using in your own teaching. And we can think of how this kind of connects with a lot of the different researchers coming in. Then John Stamper is going to give a keynote on continuous improvement of educational technology through discoveries with big data. We will have lunch, which I'm sure you're all excited about. And then I'm going to talk about connecting instructors with social behavioral scientists and machine learning researchers. How can we actually rethink experimentation to be more collaborative, dynamic, and personalized? We have a presentation on theatre performance as data, implications for research and teaching. And then we actually have the head of the Center for Instructional Technology, ideally, who's going to come and talk about the opportunities that this provides for data-intensive research. And as Min mentioned, we have a talk on applied research and workforce development. So this is Joe Pham, who's coming from the Institute for Adult Learning, who actually hosts this workforce development call that he mentioned. And finally, a former graduate of SoC is going to talk on social networks and causal inference. And we're going to have a closing summary discussion. The kind of key idea here is really helping researchers, like the ones who are visiting, as well as ones on campus, understand what opportunities are there for data-intensive research, for educational technology, for interventions. And so we'll be thinking in that session, how do we actually, what are the next steps? What can we do next week? What can we do in a month's time to actually bring research into practice? All right, so thanks so much. I'll invite Dragan up.